Welcome to New Westminster School District's first podcast of the series SD40 Talks. This is a pilot podcast series, and if you are hearing me, it means you are listening to the first in our series, and I thank you for joining us. My name is Trish Pain, and I am your host for this series. I am also SD40's curriculum facilitator for mentorship and teacher coaches. As some of you may already know, I have been entrusted with starting a mentorship program for SD40. This is our second year with an official mentorship program. I have not done this alone. I have also had the unending support of Maureen McRae-Stanger and Christy Oxley. But somewhere, somebody heard me and gave me the chance to bring a formal program to New West, and so here we are. One of the things I really wanted to do was begin a podcast series for teachers to draw on for specific topics. And as I said, this is a pilot podcast series, and so this is the very first one. It is my hope that teachers will have a wide selection of topics to choose from and listen to at their leisure. It is about conversations from teachers from within our own district, conversations with our very own, stories and gems from our New Westminster family. So speaking of our very own, today I will be interviewing three of New Westminster's finest. We've got Darren Ng, Sam Dowdell, and Astrid Hin Wong. Darren is one of our program mentors, and Sam and Astrid are two of our mentees. Our topic for today's podcast will be on the impact of mentorship. So thank you all for joining me today, and not to mention in the summer on your own time. Let's start by telling me a little bit about yourselves and your assignment this upcoming school year.
Thanks so much for having us, Trish. My name is Sam, and I'm starting at Fraser River Middle, teaching grade 6-7. This will be my third year of teaching. I had the wonderful experience of starting my career at QMS, where I met you for the first time. So super cool. I'm very excited.
And thank you for having us. I'm excited to be here. My name is Astrid, and I am returning to Queensborough Middle School to teach grade 6-7. I'm going into my second year, second and a half year. I'm really excited to be returning. And that's where I met you, Trish, as well. You made QMS feel like home.
Oh,
she's the glue.
Thank you both.
And my name is Darren Ng. This is going to be my fourth year teaching at New Westminster Secondary, teaching high school science, mostly junior science and a little bit of senior. And I'm happy to report this is my 10th year of teaching, starting this September, so I'm jazzed.
Excellent. Thank you, Darren. And so I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself as well. You know that I'm the facilitator for mentorship. This is my 21st year of teaching. I can't even believe that I'm saying it's my 21st year of teaching. Why, thank you. My home for most of those years, for 19 of those years, was QMS as well. Super hard to leave, as Sam and Astrid know. But I am excited to be on this journey with people like you. So thank you so much. So last year, New Westminster launched their very first ever mentorship program, and you three joined the crew. We fondly call it the mentorship crew. Darren, you were a mentor, and Astrid and Sam, you were mentees that were shared by Grace White, who is another one of our mentors, Darren and myself. So looking back to the fall of last year, what actually drew you to mentorship? What was on your radar, and what made you decide, this might be for me?
I think for myself, it was a pretty natural fit because I've had the privilege of being mentored right from the very beginning of my teaching career in Langley District. There was a gentleman named Nick Despotakis who is now a very successful vice principal in Vancouver School District, and every once a week I would visit his office early in the morning, and we'd have coffee and just we'd talk. I'd be like, Nick, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Or Nick, I'm so excited this actually worked, right? And that sort of ongoing conversation and ongoing support was super instrumental in getting me started to teach science the way I teach science now. Flash forward, I guess, 7 or 8 or 9 years, when you put out the call, hey, we're looking for people to help out. I was like, I'm totally in, 100% in. If anything, just to pay it forward for all the good work that Nick had done. and also to continue sort of some informal mentoring that had been happening anyways in our science department. I really, really like working with new teachers, and I think a big part of that is just because I can relate the stresses of launching the mothership, so to speak, getting the rocket ship off the ground. Of we have these aspirations to go to the moon, but we're not necessarily sure how to get there. And so a lot of that was happening informally in my department. And so when you put out the call, it was like, for sure, like I'm 100% in.
I remember that conversation with you, Darren, and I remember you saying that you were sold just at the question, how do you want to give back? And I know you reflected quite a bit on your personal experience, and that was really something that motivated you, and I appreciated that. You mentioned the informal mentoring, and that's something that New Westminster has always had mentorship. This isn't something new for New Westminster. This is the first time it's formal, but it's just who we are as a district. We've always mentored each other. We've always had those organic after-school conversations that uplift each other and help us get to the next day. So yeah, that thank you so much for sharing that, Darren.
You're welcome.
I think similar to Darren, but from a mentee perspective, going into teaching, I think I really seeked out mentorship all the time, throughout high school especially. So when I saw this opportunity, I thought it would only be natural and it would make sense to join in and seek that paired opportunity to learn from seasoned teachers and even new teachers like myself.
Thank you, Astrid.
Absolutely. I think the latter for me was really strong, like not only wanting the mentorship above, but the community of the mentees as well. Like I really wanted to find people who, like me, were starting out in the craziest time possible in the middle of a pandemic, and just finding my people and finding my support systems was really important for me. So I knew that mentorship and definitely after meeting you, Trish, that was where I needed to be.
Well, and Astrid and Sam, both of you started so quickly after your teacher training, and so you go from, having such a tight support network through PDP and in your teacher training programs to suddenly you're in this big pool and you have been entrusted with a whole bunch of kids that belong to somebody. And so, part of my goal was that people didn't feel alone because it can be very lonely, right? And I just wanted people to know that they were not alone. And so, Sam, when you mentioned being part of a community, that's exactly what we formed. And you three in particular, you really embraced that community and you made it what it is.
It's so essential. It just, it was out of necessity, I think, too. It's just so important to us.
Absolutely. And in the beginning, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so much of this experience and how we grow pedagogically, but, like all of our professional experience is through experiences that happen that we don't see coming, right? And so to be able to have those experiences and to reflect on them with someone is what steers us. Right? Thank you so much. What would you say is something that has surprised you or that you didn't see coming as either a mentor or a mentee?
Yeah, I kind of started with New West in mid-September, very early September. So I was really thrust into a position at QMS. They were looking to fill a science grade 8 position, which was not my intention, but was something that I took and absolutely happily. I was an English major kind of coming out of school and set up for that sort of teaching, but science was, I was comfortable with being excited about whatever I was learning in order to teach it. So, and then I was teaching this absolutely new curriculum, absolutely new material that I was figuring out along the way. Oh my gosh, I would tell my class, oh my gosh, I just learned about this concept. Now I'm going to tell you, I watched this awesome video and we're going to watch it together. Like those things that I was just learning and then passing along. And then the pandemic hit, and just when I thought I was able to, get my feet under myself and have a routine, no more routine. And I was surprised to find I almost was kind of asked for not leadership, but like it kind of the pandemic leveled the playing field in a sense for us new teachers. And so
That's a good way
having,
to put it.
yeah, and so having that community was as important as ever, to like learn from each other and support each other. And it was, yeah, that was very surprising. And just thinking about all the things that I was really confident at doing, but then having a place to go to say, hey, I'm actually not very confident at this. Is that okay? Is this normal? And having other people, you know, through mentorship come up with their stories of, yeah, I'm struggling with this or I'm struggling with that. I'm like, I'm actually not struggling with that. That makes me feel better about what I'm struggling with, because, you know, everyone's struggling with something, even if you're not seeing it. That was really important for me.
So I think just starting off, like right after my program finished, I jumped into a classroom where they already had 2 teachers before me. And that was really challenging because I knew they would test me. And as my personality, I tend to be very cautious and hesitant. So when I was approached with the opportunity to go to QMS, I was very cautious and I wasn't sure if I wanted to work in a middle school. And then the pandemic hit, and in a way it was kind of a blessing in disguise. I was having a rough time. So the opportunity for mentorship really worked out because I didn't really start my career in a normal school year, and just having that support really helped because I knew that, like Sam mentioned, we are all kind of in the same boat, and it really calmed my nerves. And I think this is the first official school year where I can feel like we're starting kind of on a normal note without, like, aside from the masks, but it's going to be pretty normal, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, you know, because I remember very clearly you starting off at QMS because you joined in, how many months in was it that you joined?
It was January 2020.
January. Yeah, and you're right. They had a couple of different teachers, and that's not something that we talk about in teacher training, right? I mean, and I was a faculty associate at SFU for a while, and that wasn't something those aren't realities that you discuss, right? And they're not things that anybody has any experience with because you're so focused on other things. And so suddenly you're thrust into a situation where you're having to take over. And often, you know, you're facing kids that have bonded with somebody else. And then you're trying to form a bond that is unique to you and them. And so, you know, again, it goes back to, it can feel very lonely trying to navigate that on your own. And again, not knowing what you don't know as well. And so that piece of having someone there to let you know that, no, I get it. I know these kids. I know where you're coming from. It feels good. It feels really good to go home knowing that person's there for you the next day as well.
I love that you said knowing what you don't know. That's exactly how I think we both felt, was that we just were overwhelmed with the idea that there was so much that we didn't know, and we didn't even know what it was we didn't know.
I know.
But
Yeah.
having people around us say, you know, it's okay if something comes up, like you can talk to us, that alone is like, cool.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm getting some eye stares over here, so I'm assuming as a mentor I should probably answer Sam is, I think, mentally commenting on, this is the quietest I've ever been in the last 6 months, right? So I'd say the big takeaways or surprises of the mentoring process can be, for me at least, summed up in 3 F's. So the first one was surprisingly how much fun it was. So the background of our mentorship arrangement was very, very organic. So my mentee was Raymond, and Raymond joined the mentorship program with the exclusive desire, or singular desire, he wanted to up his science game. He had already taught a number of years, but he felt quite shaky in science. So originally our pairing was just Raymond and me. And then Raymond and I agreed to meet, every other Friday to work on some science demos, hands-on science demos, and just as a dyad. But then he invited his friends and his colleagues, Astrid and Sam. And quickly, what started as fun time for two became fun time for four. And it was just fun. And I never thought on a Friday afternoon, which generally for most teachers is a time where we're pretty done and we're tired and we want some rest, how rejuvenating and energizing it would be just to hang out with you guys, and we'd be laughing and trying to do demos, and sometimes they went well and often they didn't, and then it would be like, oh, okay, well, why isn't this working? Well, good thing we're doing it here and not with the students, so we could work all the bugs out, and just very organically. It was kind of like Friday night playtime, science playtime for four fully grown adults.
Yeah,
so that was
it totally was.
Yeah, and a lot of giggling, a lot of laughing, right? The second one was friendships. So working with you guys, and then also working with Patricia, and just getting to know a whole lot of people that otherwise would not have been within my social sphere, both professionally and personally. And that warmth that comes with that, with the friendship, is very energizing and encouraging. It makes you want to seek it out more. So I was finding that, yeah, absolutely, at the end of the week on a Friday, putting together our science jams was, on one hand, physically challenging, but on the other hand, kind of exciting, because it's kind of like you're making dinner for friends. But in this case, it was like cabbage juice or, whatever cool explosion we were doing that Friday, right? And then the third sort of surprise would be a future. So Sam and I really jammed well together, and I'd say all of us jammed well together. But I think there was a mutual respect for sort of some talents and aspirations we had to to continue teaching, but perhaps in a different venue. And so we decided to start a YouTube channel together. Yay! And it's called Science Ninjas, and stay tuned.
It was a huge surprise for me, but I love that you said friendship, because that's the one that's sticking in my mind, is that I read online somewhere, sorry to jump in like this.
No, it's all good.
I read online somewhere that you need like 3 kinds of friends: someone on your own level who you can share experiences with, someone older than you that can share experiences with you and help guide you, and someone younger than you to give you perspective so that you can also guide them. So I think I've really found that, like, that's like people in this room right now. I'm like, these are my friends.
Well, it's with Sam and I too. It's kind of, she gets 2 for 1, because she gets definitely an older person with her, but also a younger one, because I'm hopelessly immature and like about 12 years old in a 44-year-old's body, right? So she gets
I thought I was energetic, and then I met Darren, and you're way more energetic than me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. Like,
but this is the safety, right? And this is when you speak of those 3 Fs, Darren, every single one of those comes down to me. It comes down to creating that safety net for people. And we don't grow, and we don't take risks, and we don't move forward if we feel unsafe, right? And everybody laughs at me because I fondly use the term being comfortably uncomfortable. And I think it's so important to be in a place where we're stretched in a way that feels a little bit uncomfortable. It's not where we would typically hang out, but we're comfortable enough to be in that place, because that's where the growth happens. Like, that's that learning edge. And we know, as once being students, but we know as well as teachers, that the learning isn't happening if we're always comfortable, right? We have to be uncomfortable, and we have to make those mistakes, those Friday mistakes. That's where the growth is happening. But we don't do that unless we feel safe. So I so appreciate, the effort that you have put in. Those Fridays, although they're a lot of fun, they are, that's where the growing is happening. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
What would you say is a challenge that you faced this year or last year that you were able to work through with the support of mentorship, whether it was your actual mentor or the program in general? And why do you think you were able to work through this?
A word that came to mind this morning to me was I think I have a bit of perfectionism. Oh my gosh. See? I have a bit of perfectionism. When it comes to teaching, I feel like I have to be really good at it because I do think I'm good at it, but that puts the pressure on me to then say, okay, if I'm good at this, then everything needs to be going smoothly. Everything needs to be going right. I can't be forgetting things. And the first thing to go from my mind when I'm stressed is my memory and like not remembering things. And that can be really, really frustrating. And that was kind of a challenge that I was going through, not with lesson planning, not with connecting with kids, not with coming up with ideas. For me, those things were like easy and natural. It was like, why am I making dumb mistakes because I'm stressed out? Why can't I get it together? And just talking to other people and hearing mentorship, like, okay, well, like mental health and longevity is also a skill and also something we need to work on. And making things easier for yourself isn't bad. It doesn't mean you have a fault. It just means that, you know, you are a limited resource and you need to choose how to spend it. So I think that was kind of my biggest struggles from last year.
That's a really good way to put it, that you are a limited resource, right? And we all talk about, and especially coming off of a year, you know, with a pandemic, we talk about being kind to ourselves and, you know, self-care and giving ourselves permission for this or for that so that we can face the day. And we talk about it all the time, and leaders have told us that, but what does it really look like, right? And how do we actually do that? You know, for myself, just because I'm a mentor doesn't mean anything. I have learned, because this conversation is one that Sam, you and I had about perfectionism. And I got so much from that conversation because I can identify, right? And we can all, this is the thing, we all identify with each other in some way. And that is self-care, right? Is having that conversation with someone who we can relate to.
I would say the challenge that I've had is just kind of figuring out who I am as a teacher, like my personality and my teaching style, and just realizing that not every teacher has to be the same, and learning that I can bring my true self into the classroom, and that is just fine for the students. And
That's actually the most important thing you can bring to the classroom is yourself.
Yeah, and it's the discovery of self, but in relation to our students, right? So, you know, if you're doing, you know, let's say you're doing, not that either of you is this at all, but let's say you wanted to try, you know, let's do some worksheets for today, right? And the energy is flat in the room. And then you're like, you know, I gotta change that up. And so suddenly the next lesson is super hands-on and engaging, and there's a new vibe, there's a new energy in the room, but you feel it too. That's a discovery of who you are, that you're a hands-on learning teacher. You know, that's where your energy is coming from. And it happens in relation to others, which is also why this work is so unique, right? We have to be in the presence of others to help discover who we are, because this work is about others, right? It's kind of a vicious cycle. Like, you have to be in there with the wolves in order to figure out what your abilities are and who you are and how you navigate all those moments.
Yeah, I like what you said about like just trying to find your personal style. That's so important, and it's something that we're told during teaching school all the time. Like, you have to bring yourself to the classroom, but you're like, who is that?
Yes.
Like, I don't know who that is yet. And it like takes a while to figure out, and like on the journey of figuring that out, that's where like support is really helpful.
And it changes over time, right? Who you are. I mean, I remember the moment in PDP where I felt like 100% myself, and it was a moment, and I felt it. And then it shifts over time. It changes shape, and it looks different, and new experiences happen that make you think, oh, no, never again. And then like, yes, and then you head in that direction. Yeah. So the mentorship program by design is a structure of support where members can take risks and grow their practice and pedagogy. What would you say is an area that you feel you have taken risks in this past year?
We're just processing time. I'd say I feel like I take a lot of risks, but I also know that I'm very comfortable taking risks, and the fact that I felt so safe made those things not feel like risks. I hope that comes across.
That's the goal.
Yeah, I felt like really supported and really safe, and even if I messed up, I could go to any of my mentors, I could go to my admin, I could go to, anyone at the school and, feel like, oh, well, I tried it and it didn't work, and it would be okay. If something didn't work, that was okay. That was the biggest thing for me, because like you said, teaching is such a strange profession. I felt like everything I did was like a moral choice. Like if I did something wrong, then I was bad. Like if you're a bad teacher, you're a bad person now. And like everything becomes like a little bit more about morality, not business. Yes. And I've kind of reflected on that. Such a strange profession in that way. So having the ability to do things like I started like a lunchtime radio thing at QMS, and that came from like a lunchtime conversation, like, man, someone should do this. And this happens a lot in my life. And when I say someone should do this, and someone's like, yeah, you should do it. I'm like, I guess I got to do it now. Like, and so that kind of happened.
That was the birth of a YouTube channel.
And yeah, exactly how these things happen to me. I'm like, someone should really do this. I'm like, oh, damn it, it's me. Okay. So the lunchtime radio thing was fun, and that took some time to like get used to, and like I was kind of trying things, and I was playing songs on the radio and on the quote unquote radio. And then Astrid and Darren could also talk about our like big science day that we had. That was a huge risk. I think. Yeah, I was like, and I was like I felt like I was super safe. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Like,
Sam, do you want to, for our listeners, do you want to give a little background of what this big science day was?
That was quite was one thing that led from this to this to this to this.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, starting with you, Darren.
Yes.
Right? Because part of what my goal was that I wanted to give mentorship wasn't just about the mentees. It was about all of us mentors as well.
Yeah.
And that this is a reciprocal growth that happens. And so one of the things that I really wanted was to give opportunities for leadership to mentors. Mm-hmm. And Darren, you were the first person that said, I'm in. What can I do? And I just said, share your passion. And so that's how it started. So do you want to explain?
Yeah.
Well, I guess connecting to your question about, what was something that perhaps challenged you, it was the background of, if you did a slow motion replay of your question of, hey, would anyone like to put themselves out there? Right? Insert, nail biting chattering. So I may come across as quite brash or, like, hey, like, like right in there. And I love jumping in the paint. But when you asked that question, Patricia, I was like, I knew it was good. I knew it would be the right thing to do, if anything, because my mentors did exactly that. They you called it exposing yourself to the wolves. I think of it more of an analogy of like in basketball, just getting into the paint. Picking up your ball and you might not sink the shot or the layout, but you get into you just start bouncing the ball and get in there, right? And I think it's one thing to, I think we go in stages. So like where Sam and Astrid are, they're like, who am I? And I'm going to try this for the first time and put it out there, but they're putting it out there to their students and they're not sure, is this going to hit or not, right? Then the next level is, okay, over the years, picked up a few tricks and experiences that have become dependable, that you can trust, right? Including yourself, like who you are more. I don't think you ever fully know thyself, but it's a lifelong process. But then you get to this next stage, Patricia, which is really cool about mentorship, is, okay, you've picked up a few things, time to share it. Put yourself out there. And so Sam and Astrid, that fear you felt is the same thing again. So it's now like, okay, what can I share? And will what I share be valuable to the people I'm sharing with it? Will it be well received? And luckily for me, and I guess for you guys too, that resulted in putting on a workshop in hands-on science activities. So that I've always felt personally very passionate about, but was like, how can we communicate and inspire this to new teachers and get them doing it in their classroom to share the joy. But it's easy to say now, like, oh yeah, we just put out a workshop on stuff, but it was like,
It was a lot.
yeah, it was
a lot.
terrifying, like joyfully terrifying. Often in old style literature, they talk about being pregnant with an idea, right? And then you have to give birth to that idea and make it a reality. And babies, when they come out, they're pretty, they're a work in progress, right? So similar, right? Putting out that workshop. But I guess the great joy was it being so well received. And then by, putting it out there, and then the friendships that came from that too. Because like our Friday night, our Friday afternoon sessions would not have occurred if that workshop hadn't happened, right? Because it was already happening with Raymond and I, and then we met through the workshop, and then you guys were like, this is awesome, let's like meet up on Fridays. And then the meet up on Fridays naturally then circle back to your big science day, where you're like, you guys had learned a lot, you were jazzed, and you yourself were now, with some trepidation, excited to share, right? And then maybe Astrid and Sam, do you want to talk about this science day?
Do you want to talk about the science day?
Yeah, sure. So I think the reason why I think the idea came up was we met up with Darren, I think starting in March or April.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching the same science unit the whole year, and I never got a chance to do those experiments with my own class and then with Sam's class. So I thought, like, it would have been so nice to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Let's back up and mention that like me, Raymond, and you were doing this weird 3-way switch where we would each take a term of socials and each take a term of science. So I would teach like one term of science to my class, and then the next term I would teach it to your class, and then the last term I would teach it to Raymond's class, and you'd do them. So we'd do this weird cycle thing. So by the time we got to Darren's, like, these are cool experiments. I wish I did these like like the first term, but it's too late because now, Yeah,
thank you, Sam. But yeah, so I think when we had that chance to bring all our classes together on one afternoon and just rotate our classes through these stations, it really worked out, because I was really hopeful to show it to Raymond's class, but then I was like, my class is missing out, and there's no time for me to plan and prep all of this for my own class. So this science extravaganza day that we planned, it was in the afternoon, and we had 3 stations set up. One was on climate change, and the other one was on
electricity and nerves,
and the last one was dry ice, which was fascinating. I wish I could have seen it, but it was really good. The kids really had a blast that afternoon, and you could see it in their eyes, and just like they were excited to learn, which was awesome.
Yeah, the kids who kind of struggled to connect with the material in other ways, like that was their time to shine. I remember, like, I'm thinking of a particular student, like that was his time to shine and just like get in there and get really excited. So it was really cool to see like those kids really enjoy it.
That was a huge endeavor, right? But that's also the part that I was so proud of, looking from the outside. I knew how the journey started with an idea, and then Darren did a session, and then you had these Friday jams, and then you just played, you experimented, and then we're like, well, what does this look like when we take this into the classroom? Let's do a 3-way big science extravaganza, which was a lot to prep for. It was so much, because it was outside. One was inside, 2 were outside, and kids had to the logistics, the logistics alone, and the supplies, and how do you prep between sessions, and but then also how do you transfer what you have learned from a mentor successfully with your students? Right. And with 2 classes that are not your own. So it was a really big deal, but it goes back to taking that risk, right? You obviously felt safe enough to take that risk, right?
Yeah.
So that actually leads me to my next question. What would you say has been a positive impact that you have seen in your students as a result of mentorship? Because this is really who it's about, right? We're sort of parallel to our students. We are learning and growing professionally, pedagogically, and even personally. But we're doing this alongside people that we're impacting every day. And so what would you say has been a positive impact that you have seen in your students as a result of your mentorship experience? It's a tough question.
I would probably say just seeing them excited to learn, because I think I would have just continued with the worksheets and the textbook, and then the year would have ended and that would have been it. But to see them actually get that hands-on learning experience was really exciting, not only for me, but for them. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways. Not only with the science experiment that we did, I partnered with Grace White, and she taught me how to put together a really awesome crochet unit for one of our exploratory blocks. And my idea was okay, but she made it like 10 times better. And I think that grew a passion in some of my students, and they really caught on to crocheting, and they really got hooked on it.
But
No pun intended.
there you go.
Yeah, and I remember the conversation between you and Grace and wondering, because this was ADST, where it was like, how do we, especially this bizarre year, how do we weave in ADST in a really meaningful way? And of course, you know, crochet is a personal passion of Grace White's. And so what a great opportunity to ask someone who about something that they do personally and how you can bring that into the classroom, right? Because had you ever crocheted before?
I had, but I wasn't super skilled at it. I actually was learning alongside my students.
Yes.
Yeah, and then some of them actually got better than me, and I was learning from them, which was so cool.
Oh my goodness. See, there it is. That's it right there, right? And that's the mentor-mentee relationship as well. Yeah. But it's very much what happens in the classroom. We're always doing things alongside our students. But, you know, a lot of people, I know in the beginning I needed all my ducks in a row. I needed to have all the notes. I needed to have I had to watch all the videos. And then there was a day where I was like, well, let's just do it and see what happens. And that is inquiry. Right? Like that's what we do with our students. Just do it and see what happens. It's that experiential learning and look what comes of it, right? There's and Darren, you spoke to this in your session. Like it is so different hearing, and we feel often that we need to lay that groundwork. This is this term and that terminology and this fact and that goes back to a lot of what we're taught to in the beginning, where it's that, you know, I do, we do, and then you do. But why not you do, and then we do, and then I'll fill in the rest at the end. Like we can flip it on its head. And we do that with our students all the time, right? And then we're learning, they're learning, and then there's the growth, right?
I think another thing to add to that, too, is everything that Sam and Astrid have been talking about, their own personal experience of adopting a posture or a willingness to try new things and to learn is tremendous modeling for the students. Because, you know, as Sam had said earlier, like, okay, I just learned this thing last Friday or an hour ago or 2 hours ago. Let's try it together. That is a very different approach and a very inspirational, hopeful approach, as opposed to presenting things as found and discovered, which is quite demotivating, which is, I'm not against worksheets. I think there's a place for it. But one challenge in terms of motivation of dropping a worksheet on a kid is like, okay, are the monolith of all knowledge and equipped with the answer key? Well, now you must attempt this paperwork of things that are already found, and you must somehow find it. Versus, let's discover this together. Similar to whether it's a passion project like crocheting, where it's like, this mentor sounds like she was a very masterful crocheter, right? And she's jazzed about that, and she shares that passion with you. And you're not just sharing with your students how to crochet, you're sharing, Astrid, your joy of learning how to crochet, and that process, as opposed to the end point, is the process. And that is a very powerful thing to share with students that benefits them, right? If we're really getting to the matter of like, why are we here? Why do kids go to school? It's to learn how to learn, not just to learn, but to learn how to learn. And you two were modeling how to learn and the excitement that naturally comes from that. And it's not engineered anymore. It's a natural byproduct. And then as a mentor, same thing. I'm super excited to, like, how am I going to share this learning and with you guys in a way that makes sense to you guys? And then I find I myself learn a ton, and things that may have seemed, oh yeah, like this experiment I've done 1,000 times suddenly is brand new again, because it's like, oh, I've never seen it like that way. And that question, Astrid or Sam, that you asked about, like, why is it working like this? It's like, I never thought about that. Instead of, well, this is the same thing I've done for the last 10,000 years, and we're going to do it exactly. Everything old is new again, and reinvigorated. And it's really exciting to see. And that sort of excitement and enthusiasm is super contagious, and really gets kids jazzed up. Right?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that our students become the lucky recipients of our risks and our professional development, because every conversation, whether it's a closed door conversation at the end of the day because you've had a really rough day, or because you've on your way to work you had this bright idea and you're like, I got to share it with somebody. Our students become the lucky recipients of the connections that we're making, because this is where the inspiration is coming from. And obviously, you three and Raymond are sort of a success story in terms of how it just has so many tentacles, right? Like, it grew from here and it went to here and it went to here, and it became something so big and profound that your students had no choice but to be the lucky recipients of your growth.
I love that we're talking about taking risks, and we're talking about, like, how does that affect our students. I think our students watch us take risks and learn the power of risk taking, and learn about courage. I read somewhere, well, courage isn't not being scared. Courage is doing it scared.
Yes.
And modeling that for our students, I think, like, really showed them, okay, well, if she doesn't know what she's doing and I don't know what I'm doing, I've never, not that I've never had this attitude, but I learned very quickly that I am a jack of all trades, master of none type of person. I enjoy learning about something, and I learn kind of a little bit about it, and then I move on to the next shiny thing. And that's just why I love middle school too, because there's always something new to learn. But I always expect my students are going to be better than me at something. That's like the hope, right? That they take, they're not going to be, if they're going to be a teacher, awesome, they can be like me. But ideally, they actually go off and they learn other things, and they're diverse, and, like, hopefully they will be better at something than I am.
But what you just explained, that is a perspective that it's a notion that has been disrupted, right? Like, we often, and I know for me at the beginning of my career, and it's also how I looked at my teachers too growing up. I just looked at them as they were the sage on the stage. They were the person that was the holder of all knowledge. And so, Astrid, you taking that risk and learning alongside your students was the biggest message of safety, right? Your students felt safe. And we often feel that if we don't come in with all of this looking like we have it all, that we don't, if I don't know every stitch, then they're not going to take me seriously. But that's just simply not true, right? It's the experience and those hard questions that we ask ourselves and each other, and the discovery that actually is what students gravitate towards. They actually feel like, okay, there is control in here. Our teacher's moving along with us.
And I think, too, the students benefit, too, in a mentorship framework. The teacher is no longer just bringing his or her expertise or his or her posture of learning. They're bringing a community posture of learning, because, when Astrid does her science thing, she's not just doing her science thing. She's doing her science thing in Astrid's way, but with the collective experience of all the people who've invested in her. And so it's like one is bringing a community of 1,000, right? Which is actually a much humbler and more powerful approach It's because you're feeding the shepherd instead of the shepherd being hungry and then giving scraps to the students. The students are well fed because the shepherd is well fed, but the shepherd is also humble enough to receive food from elsewhere, right? And everyone leaves full.
I like that. So what is something that you would celebrate about yourself?
I wish I had Cool and the Gang Celebrate Good Times theme music right now. I don't.
Celebrate good Come on. Thinking about the risks you've taken and the journey you've been on and all the newness, especially for Sam and Astrid. You're still so early in your career. You know, when you think about the growth that has happened, when you really, really pause to think about where you started and where you are today, you're sitting here in a room recording a podcast and talking about yourselves. And, you know, a lot of people feel that they don't have anything to offer, but my goodness, you're here because you have so much to share. So what is something that you would celebrate about yourself now? And Darren, to you too.
Yeah. I'd say confidence. I think I've kind of have outward confidence, but inward confidence is something that I struggle with, or that inward like self-worth and self-esteem is something I've always struggled with. And I think a lot of people have, even though you put on the mask. A lot of artists and performers feel the same way, right? Yeah. That you put on this outward, you put on this outward performance that's really exuberant and makes you hit tables with your watch. But inside you're like shaking and you're like, is this the right thing to do? I'm not sure. Like, is this normal? Am I like, when is the face going to crack? And so I feel like I'm on this journey and it's definitely not over. Like I still have moments where I'm like, the face is going to crack. Everyone's going to find out I'm a fraud. I have no idea what I'm doing. But to look around and see, oh, like everyone kind of has that, especially teachers, when what you do can be very performative, that you can be vulnerable with your colleagues and you can also be vulnerable with your kids. Like that's okay. So I'm proud of myself for going along that journey and like building that up. And I was even told this year at FRM, like, oh yeah, so your new teaching partner, she's new to middle school, and so you'll be, you know, teaching her and guiding her. I'm like, great. she's gonna think I know what I'm doing. That's nice. But you pass it on. Like it's the flow of education.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I would kind of build off of that. Like confidence is a big one. I'm still working on that. But I think I would say for myself, it would be being okay with not having everything planned out. Because going into this, I would have like my full units, like every detail thought out. And then I think it's more about the excitement of wanting to teach it and learning how to teach it more so than realizing like, oh, it's okay if I don't actually know it. I could just search it up. And kids learn that it's okay not to learn everything or know everything.
Yes.
That's the great thing about technology. You could just Google it right in front of them.
So many live Google sessions. And we're going to skip this one because it's an ad.
That's a really, Astrid, that's a, what you just shared was, I think, the starting point for so many of us, right? Especially when you come out of teacher training, right? You have to submit your unit plans. They have to be reviewed. You're given feedback. You have to revise them, and then you have to live it out, and it has to be a 12-week unit. There's so many parameters around this. But the point you just made, that you don't have to have everything planned out, is also a sign to me that what you're doing is that you're following the lead of your students, which is, I think, something that becomes more intuitive, but also so necessary. And it's something with the curriculum shift, in the recent years, that has become front and center. So we can have our skeleton and we can know the direction we want to go. And it's that whole idea of planning with the end in mind, right? We know where we need our kids to get. These are the goalposts. This is where we need to get them. But the plan might look different depending on what the needs of my students are. So you could be comfortable tossing something because, and not because you've run out of time, but because the kids don't need that, right? And so not having everything planned out all the time is also very powerful. I mean, we need to know where we're going, obviously, but being so detailed with our plan and not being willing to deviate can be very detrimental to our kids, right? And so you sharing this right now is also a sign that you are following the lead of your kids.
Yeah, I call it reactive teaching. I'm like, I definitely find it more natural to follow the lead of the students. I remember during my practicum, like we it's required. Like, it's nothing against our essays and FAs. Like, it's required that we show that we know, how to fill out a really detailed lesson plan, even if we're not going to follow it. But I often I found I could find that a little suffocating sometimes, and I'm like, is this
Absolutely.
what real? So I wasn't very good at my teaching program. Like, I wasn't getting super great feedback because my plans were very like, I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't met them yet. Like, I love building my units around, okay, these are the kids and this is what you like. These are like learning about the students first. And that was like the biggest advice that was like a weight off my shoulders when I first started was, oh yeah, you don't have to plan a unit the first week. You just get to know the kids. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Because when you're fresh out of teaching program, it's that's just the way the teaching program was built as well.
I think what you two have commented on is vitally important, because certainly not to discourage the planning process, of course, as Patricia
because
said.
it is an exercise, right? We need to have the components for our students.
And
like
you need to know where you're going. You need
Yes.
to know, and you can't evaluate the success of something if you don't know sort of some minimally direction. But that being said, I think what you two are highlighting on is it's acknowledging and deeply respecting the number one stakeholder in this process, which is our students.
In the relationship.
So, and so to assume, well, things are going to go according to my plan is completely ignoring the main reason why we're there, which is the kids, right? And their responses to us, right? And us adjusting things to meet their specific need at that time. And to kind of use a music analogy, and I'm not a musician, but I enjoy it, is our plans are sort of the notes that we're hoping to hit, but the joy comes from the improvisation based on the audience receiving those notes.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
it's together. So we're trying to make a song, but together. It's not a solo act. It's a duet at minimum, and even better, a full out, straight out chorus with individual solos and people Mariah carrying in the background, sure.
Absolutely.
Without the drama, perhaps. But definitely with the drama, actually, the more I think about it.
Yeah.
And with that drama and with that improvisation, that's this whole, teaching education enterprise, right? I guess, Patricia, to answer your question about what I want to celebrate is, I think the big one is just, and I've already mentioned it before, is just making a whole lot of new friends, like just professionally and personally, within the district. And I think what's exciting is friends that perhaps I wouldn't have been able to make if it weren't for this mentorship program, if it weren't for getting in the paint, right? And I don't want that to sound self-congratulatory, because it's actually the exact opposite. I'm like so grateful to, hey man, I was able to play basketball with you guys. This is great, right? But to be able to join that team and then to be part of a much larger community, and so now in these spheres, it's like I see Astrid before I didn't know anybody from QMS or middle school at all, and now I have at least 3 friends in middle school that I would consider professional homies, like people that when I think of Astrid, when I think of Raymond, when I think of Sam, I smile, and I'm like, these are people I can call up and run something by. And that's sort of also the evolution, I think, of a mentorship sort of relationship. It may start as mentor-mentee, but that quickly fades away. Sam's my YouTube partner, and I assure you, she's my partner. Darren, this ain't gonna work. Okay, we're shutting this sucker down, right? Like this part down, or Darren, this is good, right? So, and that's definitely not a mentor-mentee relationship. It's just a professional friendship,
Yes.
which is wonderful. Like just to be able to, even this podcast we're talking is super conversational, and it's like talking with friends about a shared passion, which happens to be let's get kids super excited about learning, right? The other big celebration thing I think is some validation, because sometimes when we work alone, we can think we're totally crazy. Like in the sense of like, okay, I like one conversation I frequently have with colleagues is, I'll meet them in the morning and we're photocopying or something, and they go, "Hey, Ng," like, "Good morning. What are you gonna blow up today?" And I always, to be honest, cringe a little bit at that question. And it's not a mean-spirited question on the part of my coworker. It's just more, it kind of highlights a lack of relationship, I think, because it's kind of like, oh, he's the, our celebrated arsonist, right? when in fact the validation point comes from like, okay, I've been doing some things that I'm hoping are hitting with my students, and it seems like it is, and it seems like they're getting jazzed up about science. Okay, so now I've been invited to share some of that, and that's a risk too. But then within the safe community, but not too safe, right? Like adventuresome community, I think is a better way of describing it. The adventure-loving community of this mentorship community is now there's some fellow colleagues that are trying it out too, and they also are experiencing the joys with a modicum of success. And so after a while, it kind of like what Sam and Astrid were saying, it builds a confidence that, okay, if I'm crazy, I guess I got some friends who are also crazy with me. Or this actually is some good stuff, because it's not just rooted in me. It's rooted in a collective experience that, of course, is going to be more successful than batting it out alone, right? We're kind of adventuring together.
Wow, that was very profound, Darren.
Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy.
Thank you. So, as we do every year, it'll happen in September, it'll happen again in January, we will have an influx of new teachers, very, very brand new teachers coming into this profession, coming into New Westminster. You were there, Darren was there, I was there. What would be some advice you would give to a brand new teacher that is just fresh coming into this profession?
Join the mentorship program ASAP. Like
plug.
Really. Like find your people.
Yes.
Find people that are going to support you and help you along the way. And if you are a little more experienced, pay it forward, because whatever successes that you as the more experienced teacher are experiencing with your students absolutely came from a lot of your own hard work, but I would argue it's also come from tremendous support that you've received along the way, whether it's acknowledged or not, that we, whatever successes we have are largely shared. And so I would say either get some help or start giving some help.
Yeah.
People, you don't do it alone.
No way.
Don't think you have to do it alone.
Exactly.
Don't think you should do it alone.
And it's not fun. It's lonely.
Yeah.
It's lonely.
It's not, it is such a different profession where we are with kids, but we're not with adults all day.
Yeah.
And we are the sole one in the room, or there's only a few adults in the room and they cycle out. I'm thinking of our EAs, our wonderful, wonderful EAs as well, who are so supportive. But yeah, other than the odd chat in the hallway, like if you don't make the time to reach out and cycle around to your classrooms to meet for lunch, to get involved in things like mentorship, it's especially with the pandemic, it was hard to find that time to really connect. So for me, mentorship was the saving grace of like, this is my time to hop on a call. And like, I know we did have a couple in-person sessions, which I thought were super vital. To getting through that year and to kind of like having that release of like, okay, we're okay. I don't have to be so on guard. And yeah, circling back to the planning thing, like with over planning, in cases of over planning, which I totally have done as well and totally do, that you got to go back to relationships, and you can't just jump on an entire project that you're really excited about on a kid the first day. Like, you got to learn their name, and just like, just being reminded of those things, like, slow down, it's okay. Like, we know you have these amazing ideas, and like you want to get to them, and you want to like show off some huge project, but like then at the end of the day, it's about your relationship with those kids and your relationship with that one kid, and whether they feel safe in your room. So like, never forgetting that piece, and realizing that, you know, you got to slow down yourself and like take care of you. You got to feed the shepherd to feed the sheeples.
They're much more than sheeples.
They're much more than sheeples. The sheepies, the chillins.
The chillins. Wild, wonderful, wild chillins. With tremendous potential.
To add on to that, I think I would say you will have some challenging days, and that's okay. Some lessons will flop, and that's fine, because you have the next day and you can try it again.
Yeah.
And then, if anything, students learn more from lessons that flop than the ones that go perfectly.
Yes.
So yeah.
And that's a good place to get to, where you're comfortable knowing that, right? Like, it's very uncomfortable at times. You know, the lesson flopped and we beat ourselves up, and but those are the best lessons, and those are the best lessons for the kids to have a redo, right? And to dig deeper. And we have to be okay. We have to loosen our grip, and we can be like, good planning is good planning. We have everything all planned out, but we have to go in with a loose grip on it.
Yep.
Right? We have to know exactly what direction we're going. But have a loose grip on it for those lessons that flop, so that we can try it again, right?
Keeping flexible.
Yeah. So, last question. If you could give advice to your first year September self, and Darren, to you as well, what would it be?
Stay away from Darren Ng. I'm just kidding.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I think I would. Awkward silence. I think I would tell my September self that it's going to be okay. Yeah. You are okay. You are trying your best, and that is all you can do. You know, that lesson's going to flop, and that's going to shift your entire schedule that you had in your mind, and that's okay. Like, don't have all the pieces, you know, ready to grab out of the air, but don't be attached to the idea that you have to have every puzzle piece connected. It's okay to switch out pieces and build pieces that fit with other pieces. Don't get stuck on like, here's my huge overarching plan and it all has to go correct. And if it doesn't, then, you know, I've failed or whatever. Just like, be kind to yourself and have fun. Find the joy.
Have fun, find the joy.
Yeah. And leave before 6:00.
Yeah.
By God.
Unless you're going to a Friday night science jam, then you're welcome to
then
stay.
it all goes out the window.
You're welcome to stay. What about you, Astrid? What would you tell yourself?
I think Sam took the words out of my mouth, because I was going to say the same thing.
If I was to build a Wayback Machine and visit myself 10 years ago, I think probably the first thing I'd tell myself is, whatever you do with these kids, remember they're someone's kid. Yeah. And so these are very precious, precious cargo, you know? And always remind yourself of your first love. So, like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And you're doing this because you're here to serve young people and get them excited to do the challenging and joyful task of learning. And you are the facilitator, the shepherd, the guide, the sometimes instigator, sometimes policeman, woman, the firefighter, counselor, all of that rolled into one. And you know you can't be all things to all people, but you can often be the right person at the right time for a young person who needs something and may need you to get to that next step, but also reminding yourself that they themselves will need to be walking that journey, and that you're just encouraging them and helping them along the way, and that all your actions and the things you do should always be rooted in that strong sense of purpose and mission. And if you do that, time's your ally, and you will meet many friends along the way who are going to help you with that. And when you stumble, which you will, it's okay, because you'll get back up again and continue to serve.
I think if I was to give 21 years ago, September, I would probably tell myself that it's okay to change, and I don't have to be one way all the time, that I have permission to change gears and to be a different way. And that's part of the discovery of self, that journey of learning who we are, that I don't have to continue and always do things this way. And I also don't have to be this way all the time. And Astrid, I don't know if you remember, you might, as I speak about this, it might all come flooding back to you, but you joined QMS at a time that was challenging, right? You had those kids that it was halfway through the school year, just about, and it was challenging, right? You were trying to create a community that was unique to you and them. And I remember we came together at lunchtime, and your soup spilled.
Yeah.
Remember the story?
Can't forget it.
And we, a ton of us jumped up and to help you out. And then suddenly there was all this food that was coming across the table. Take this, we have this, here's a half a banana. And you needed a moment, because you were having a crap day with trying to learn the kids and them learn you. And I that was a remembering moment for me to what that would have been like, because we've all had, and we're going to continue to have those moments. Being a facilitator, I've had those moments. I have them all the time. But the reason why you come back, and the reason why you came back the next day, and the reason why you came back into the lunchroom after you took a moment was because we were all there for you, right? And that's really my goal with mentorship, and is just that, and I said it at the beginning, but that I don't ever want anyone to feel alone. And that's, that day, it's easy to feel that you're the only one in the room whose soup is all over the floor. Mm-hmm. You're the only one in the room who's, a student is just missing the previous teacher and isn't sure about you, but you're not ever the only one whose soup spills and whose student you're trying to convince to trust you. And so, I appreciate those moments. And as a mentor, those are the reasons why I do this work, is because of people like you three here, who have experiences which are opportunities to support others. And so I thank you. I thank you all for the time that you've put in. I thank you for your enthusiasm. I thank you for your interest, and I thank you for your passion. It is very clear that you are doing this work for the kids, with a side of growing yourselves personally. So I thank you all. I have such a deep care and respect for all of you, and I am grateful for your friendship as well. But I'm excited for this year and to see where you're going to go next. And Darren, thank you for your mentorship. Thank you for today, and for setting all of this up, and for jumping every time help is needed.
You're most welcome.
I'm proud of all of you.
I saw the finger on the button.
Thank you all so much for being part of making mentorship come alive in New Westminster. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just happy to be a part of it.
So is this a good time to cue our exit theme music?
We can cue the music.